guys, it's Chris here, and I'm with my buddy Kyle Van Deusen. You guys might know him as the agency rock star that occupies most Facebook groups these days. You'll see him in all the comments. But he is one of my good friends. I've been chatting with him on and off for the better part of a couple of years now since I've started on this journey. So he and I have a really good relationship, and he's decided to give me some of his time to join us here and do a Q&A about sales and how to maintain a sales pipeline. So Kyle, before I continue, do you want to just, I know we have people joining the group all the time, so do you want to just give a quick rundown of who you are, where you come from, and where you are at now?
So yes, my name is Kyle Van Deusen. I own OGAL Web Design, a small one-man show just outside of Fort Worth, Texas. I started this as a side business a little over 2 years ago, and in June of 2017, I was able to quit my full-time job and do this full-time. So this is all I do every day. Like Chris said, besides spending a bunch of time on Facebook groups, and I'm just getting to know all these people in these groups and learning so much from everybody. And I'm glad to be able to get on here with Chris and contribute. Me and him talk pretty often, so I'm glad to be on here with everybody. So hello.
I love how you memorized the date that you left your job.
God. I wish I had the actual date. I have it in my calendar, but I don't have that one memorized. But yes, I'm thankful for it every single day.
I don't think I'll ever forget that date either. I mean, for me, it's a little bit easier because it's the November 1st of this year. But that's one of the things that I think me and Kyle really connect on is the fact that we both come from this same sort of employer background where we had this job, full-time job, hated it for the most part, and did our own thing, kind of grew our side hustle into a full-fledged business. And that's sort of where I am. I'm sort of riding the coattails or following in the footsteps of Mr. Kyle Van Deusen. So if I can reach the income potential that he's at right now, I'd be ecstatic, even if it was in the next 6 to 12 months. But Kyle, you're doing pretty well. I know I think you had a goal of trying to break the 6-figure mark this year. I think you're on the road to breaking that, right?
I already did. So I will preface this by saying, like, you have me on here talking about sales, but I want to tell everybody up front, like, I'm no sales expert. I don't have some 5-point plan. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. I'm just like everybody else in these groups. I found things that didn't work for me, found things that did work for me, got lucky sometimes, had some good breaks. But yeah, I mean, my goal, when I worked my full-time job, I was hovering under 50,000 a year and feeling like I was making enough money, to support my family and stuff. Yeah. But obviously we all want to make more money.
Right.
So the initial goal was just make that much on my own.
Yeah.
And I would have been super happy with that. And as I saw that become more feasible and hit that goal, I set my sights on 6 figures for this calendar year for 2018, and I guess last month I crossed that mark. So, or maybe just at the beginning of this month. Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge. That's like everybody's sort of first goal is to try to hit that 6-figure mark, because it seems like the unattainable goal, right? But it's not really unattainable, but it just seems just out of reach for most people, right? But I think you're sort of discrediting yourself a little bit, because you say that you're just like a normal guy and that you're not like a sales guru. And I know you're not a sales, you're not selling a sales course here or anything, but
right.
To be able to get sales that are sustainable and to maintain a sales pipeline the way that you have does require a certain sort of discipline and skill sets that the average entrepreneur doesn't have. Because I would say that a lot of people in not just my group, but in many other Facebook groups, they struggle with sales. Whereas opposed to you right now, you were just talking off camera about the fact that you are not struggling with having too little work. In fact, it's more of an issue of not pushing those projects through. So you are doing some things right. You're doing a lot of things right. And that's why I have you on here, because you do seem to have cracked the nut for the sort of like entry level sort of agency entrepreneur who has built this up to this point and doesn't have this kind of like 20 years of sales experience and all this other stuff. So can you sort of elaborate how did you get to this point? In your opinion, what was one of the top maybe two or three things that you think have gotten you to the point where you are now from a sales side of things, where you have this kind of steady sales flow.
Okay, yeah. Well, I appreciate those kind words. I think we all have imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
So
that's
I
right.
definitely. I mean, if we peel back the curtain big time here, and I don't. Actually, I love to peel back the curtain all the time, so I'm lying. I'm doing it in my son's bedroom here.
Yeah.
If we panned this camera around, we would see like toys and Legos and stuff. So it's, you can make six figures in your son's bedroom.
That's right.
I don't want to be here forever, but it's absolutely attainable for anyone.
Right.
I need to get one of those cool screens Chris has, but I just told him I need this part of the room. So look,
Yeah.
we're cool. So yeah, there's a few things that have been the key to getting there. So the first one is making sure you have some kind of pipeline for monthly recurring revenue. It's just too hard and not realistic to think that you're just going to like jump from project to project to project without any kind of lapse in time. No matter what the economy does, no matter the time of the year. We're going through, the holiday season now, and I know a lot of businesses are going to be taking time off and stuff like that. So it's just unfeasible to think that you're going to keep a good month-to-month sales without some kind of recurring revenue. So for me, the majority of that's just been through, maintenance and care plans and stuff like that. The majority of my people are on like $75 a month plans until 2019 when I'm raising that price slightly. But at first it just seemed like that number didn't add up to much at the end of the month,
Yeah.
Thinking, okay, well, the goal is to be able to pay all my bills with monthly recurring revenue. And I take all my monthly bills and then divide that by 75. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to build so many sites to get. But the truth is, they do start adding up over time,
Yeah.
So I'm getting to the point now where every month, I can count on about $3,500 to $3,800 every month without doing anything extra. I don't need to sell any projects and I'll have that money coming in. So a lot of that's just taking the time and making sure you try to push that as much as you can on each project. And I know we want to talk about that a little bit more, but you asked me for a couple things here, so I'll be brief on that one if that's considered brief.
Cool. Yeah, that's good.
So I think one thing was when I first started the business, I was relying on my geography. So I thought all my customers were going to be like within driving distance of my business. And I live in rural Texas. And I didn't realize how unfeasible that would be to just rely on my neighbors to support my business, So finding some ways to reach out online on the internet, like we're doing right now, is a great way to just start building your name up, getting opportunities. Coming here on and chatting with Chris is a great one. I get to introduce myself to a whole bunch of new people. Maybe I can send projects their way. Maybe they can send projects my way. It does happen, So I think that's been a good opportunity for me, is just realize that I'm not limited to the geography. And then the other thing is writing down some goals and then staring at them all the time. And I'm not one of those people that would normally do that. My wife is one of those people, like she'll write out everything for the year. In fact, we have a little thing on a refrigerator and it's like the goals for the year. And it's just a little piece of paper, but we'll tick those off, as the year goes. And they're all just stacked on top of each other back to like 2014 or something, and you can go back through those and see where we crossed them all off. And we just have to stare at those things all the time. And it does make a difference. So write down whatever your goal is. If it's 20,000 a year, it doesn't matter what the goal is. Write it down and look at it every day. That'll make it more attainable if you're having to stare at it and it's staring back at you.
It's like an accountability thing, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That just to jump in there, like Kim Doyle has this new content creator planner that she's coming out with. And there was actually a planner out there that I was looking into that is sort of like the same thing. It forces you to plan your day on a day-to-day basis, so you have goals for each day, but then it also forces you to do goals for each quarter and each 6 months and 12 months. So and it's just one of those things that seems kind of, for me, I think when I first heard that idea, it sounded kind of like tacky or corny or whatever, and it seemed like, oh well, that can't possibly work, just writing something down is not going to make it happen, right? But it's true though that it does help quite a bit when you actually have it on paper and that it's something that you have to do, kind of thing, as opposed to just passively having it at the back of your head, right?
Right. It just makes it more real, and I'm kind of one of those people too. Like I like a list of things to do because it's so satisfying being like, I'm done with this and I can check this off the list.
Yeah.
So that's just like another one of those things. Um, you know, that's definitely been helpful for me, but I'm with you. It's hokey and it feels weird and, but you just do it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, let's just jump back to the whole monthly recurring revenue talk, because I know we were talking about this off camera as well, and we were saying that. Well, actually, you were explaining to me about how you've changed the positioning of your care plans a little bit. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I think everything in my business is a constant work in progress. I'd like to say like this is in concrete now and this is how I'm going to do things. But anytime I do that, I seem to find some kind of issue and end up changing it. But, when I first started out, doing this, I was building a site for a customer, asking for 50% down, asking for the other 50% when we went live, and then giving them my care plan for 30 days for free, just as like a nice little gift. And then maybe they love it and want to stay on it. But the problem is a care plan isn't exciting. Nobody's excited to sign up for a care plan. They're not going to get anything fun out of it. They're not going to see like this a huge return on investment from it. But what it is it's peace of mind, So that's kind of something hard to sell at the end of the project, because then they're like, well, now I already got what I want. I already have the site. It's live. Everything's good now. Why do I want to keep paying for this, So then you have to go back and backtrack and say, well, yeah, I built you a good site and I did do all these things, but you have to update it and you have to do these things to it all the time. And then they're like, well, why did you do it that way? Or why didn't you tell me that at the beginning? So what I've done at this point is just start writing all those things into the proposal. So I try to put it as plain as I can that like, we're building this on WordPress and these are all the reasons why, because WordPress is fantastic, but there's downsides to that too. There's a lot of software that's going inside of it that has to keep updated. There's security, it's just like anything else. Your phone has to get updated. Your website's going to have to get updated. So you can do it, you can hire somebody else to do it, or you can just continue to pay me to do it. And I already know how your website works.
Right.
So, if you're going to build a site, you have to factor in this maintenance. Like there's going to be an ongoing cost forever. And maybe it's your time or maybe it's paying somebody. So I'll just write in my care plan, whatever, I have a couple different tiers or whatever, but whatever I think makes the most sense for them, I just write that into the proposal as a monthly ongoing cost from the very beginning. Yeah. So there's not that confrontation at the end of the project.
And this is one of the things that I was talking to Kyle about is like, I actually really like that. And it's something that I think I'm going to probably put in place in my own business, because like I actually was talking to Kyle about how in my old job, when I first joined that business, the company had a massive customer satisfaction issue. Every single one of their clients, every single one of their customers was pissed off at them. They were losing customers on a weekly basis, and you're talking about accounts that were valued at anywhere between $30,000 to upwards to $200,000 a year. And on my first month there at that business, I actually stopped everybody dead in their tracks, and I said, like, look, we need to address the root cause of this issue. And I ended up digging into it and found that the root cause was that all of their sales guys weren't actually setting expectations correctly. There was a whole maintenance side. It's funny, actually, it was a maintenance thing. There was a whole maintenance side of the business that customers weren't aware of, and they weren't told up front. And then later down the road, when the maintenance came up, they were faced with a $6,000-$7,000 bill. And they were like, what in the world? I paid $40,000 for this equipment. Why am I spending a quarter of that all over again on maintenance? And there was good reasons for it, but they didn't know about it. And we implemented this whole campaign of like trying to make sure that everybody was setting expectations at the same level. And we had a kind of like a script and everything that I put together. And customer satisfaction just shot through the roof, and the business kind of stabilized at that point. And I learned a valuable lesson, not just from that business, but also from I've been a manager at other businesses doing customer service. I've been like a CS kind of guy for like a long time. And setting expectations for me is one of the most important things. Like I was talking to Kyle about how, how shitty it could be, excuse my language, but how shitty it could be to have a project go from, start to finish, and you do everything right. and you have like this perfect onboarding, and you have all this like a smooth content, gathering process. You build out the site, it looks beautiful, and at the end you drop this bomb on them that they aren't expecting, and it just sours the whole project, and you could potentially lose a referral from that, right? And like, we were talking about monthly recurring revenue in this part of the Q&A, but this is a good segue into the whole referral side of things, right? So I know that you get a lot of referral work from your clients, and that's one of the things I think that you're probably doing right, is you're very good at communicating that side of things, and I think setting the expectations correctly is incredibly important, especially for what we do, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't change the price for them. It's just them understanding that this is something that they're going to be having to think about.
Right.
So I still offer it for free for a month because I don't know, it just sounds fun. But just telling them up front, and not only have I seen like the relationship continues on a better note, but also I'm closing care plans at a much higher rate now, because now before they even sign the contract, they know that this is something they're going to have to do. So it's not a surprise anymore. So, I mean, the last probably 6 or 7 projects I sold, the care plan just came with it. So that starts adding up quickly.
Yeah, 100%. And you were, when you were live streaming with Matt Siebert on at WordCamp, I jumped in on one of those lives with a lady who was doing presentation where she said it's just bundled into the project. They don't have a choice. It's just the care plan is absolutely required. And I've never actually thought about it that way, of approaching it that way, but it makes 100% sense to me. It seems to be working for you at this point, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things, like when you start becoming profitable and when you start getting enough monthly recurring revenue that you're not panicking every month, can I pay my bills? You just get this whole load of freedom where now you can say no to customers, and now you can say, okay, well, this is my process, take it or leave it. And it's hard to do that at the beginning, but you're so much more authentic that way, and people have so much more trust in you because you come in as an authority and say, this is how it's done, that you end up getting more business saying no to things. Does that make sense? You have all that confidence.
There's the book Fanatical Prospecting. Have you ever read that?
I haven't.
Okay. Fanatical Prospecting is a great book. I actually got it on Audible. Listened to most of it. I haven't gotten through the whole thing because I've been pretty busy. But there's some really good nuggets in there, and one of them is that there's this whole, like, I don't remember the exact term that they use, but it's like this the sort of it's like a desperation mode that people get into, and that it actually works. It works against you in sales. So like if you when you're doing really well and you have like sales coming in, you're confident, and you're not begging so much. You're a little bit more relaxed, and that frame of mind helps you close even more sales. Yeah. But once you start getting into this desperation mode, everything starts to turn around, and you start being a little bit more desperate in your tone or in your wording, and people pick up on that, even if it's not consciously, and it ends up hurting you in the sales game, and you end up closing less deals. So it's funny because it's like this whole conundrum of like, if you can close one sale, you'll be more comfortable and you'll close a second one easier. But it's like when you can't close a sale that you get into this mode where you think like you gotta reduce your prices, you gotta include more things, you gotta kind of like, you gotta devalue yourself to a certain extent, right? And I think the universal law of need is what code. Yeah, I think that might have been what it was called actually. It was really interesting, and I think anybody who's interested in sales, because this Q&A is about sales, I would highly recommend the Fanatical Prospecting book. It's really, really good. It's a bit hardcore in terms of like when you're talking about prospecting for clients, as opposed to maybe having other channels where you're getting inbound work, right, as opposed to being outbound focused, right? But one of the things that I wanted to ask you to, actually, I have a couple questions for you. The first thing is, and maybe we'll do it in reverse. I'll ask the questions and then we'll answer them in reverse. But the first question is, like, you have a bunch of channels where you're getting either referrals from or you're getting leads from. How are you maintaining those leads? How are you making sure that they don't fall through the crack, that you're not forgetting to follow up? what kind of a system do you have in place for that? That's the first thing. And the second one, which I'd like you to answer first because it's probably more important for people just starting out, is how did you go about getting your first 1 or 2 sales that helped to really start to get you traction and snowball the sales for you?
Okay, yeah, awesome. So you might have to remind me of the first question you want me to answer.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh, gone. So the very first thing that ever happened, like I had never designed or worked on a website really at all, other than like in high school, doing some HTML or something. But like professionally, I'd never done it. I was doing volunteering at a nonprofit in town. And they had a website designer that they were unhappy with, and they just really needed maintenance on the site. They needed to post new stuff on there and whatnot, and it was on Wix. And I'd never heard of Wix before, but they said, "Hey, I was a graphic designer, and that's what I did full time. So I think anytime you do something on a computer, people just think you do everything. Like they call me for IT support, so they're like, "Hey, fix my website." And I'm like, "Okay, sure." So they asked if I could help. I logged in. Obviously, it was real easy to do. And they said, "Okay, well, we're paying her every time we need to add something, and she'll just randomly send us invoices. So sometimes it's $50, sometimes it's $500, and we just had no idea how to budget for this. What if we just paid you every month and you helped us when we need it?" And I was like, okay, sure. It was never my plan to go into this business, but that was the first thing I ever did. And when I started doing that work for them, they recommended me to somebody that was on the board knew that I was doing that. And they recommended me to a friend that they knew that had a business that needed a website. So I randomly got a phone call and was like, "Hey, we heard, you build websites. Can you build our website?" Okay, yeah, sure. So, that just kind of snowballed from there as far as just getting referrals. So I use the idea of working with nonprofits a lot when people ask me this question, because one, it feels good to do something for like a cause that you think is good. And the people I was doing work for, I really liked the work they did. So, I was glad to help them out anyways. But two, all those nonprofits usually have a board of directors, and it's usually a bunch of people who are either business people, high up in a business somewhere, or they're retired, but they know everybody in town. It's some people with some money and some clout, because that's why they've been asked to be on the board, because they can get things done and they can fundraise and do all that. They just know the right people. So if you can get in with a nonprofit and do some work for them, maybe it's pro bono, maybe it's just to help them out, get on their good side, because they just have a huge network of people that you can tap into right away. So you don't have to know everybody in town. You just got to know the right people. So I think it's a good way to just get an in somewhere.
That's funny, man, because like the more I get to know you, the more I realize how much we have in common. Because I actually did pro bono work for a nonprofit as well, actually, very early on in my business. I actually found a website where you can go in and you can create a profile, list up all the things that you are able to offer in terms of services. So I put in like web design, SEO, blah, 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 blah. And any nonprofits that need work will contact you and say, are you willing to do work for me for this project? And so I threw my profile up there thinking, okay, you know what, it's not going to hurt. You can actually apply for projects that are open through there too. And I did. I ended up getting a work for a nonprofit in I think Boston somewhere, and it was like a really stupidly simple work. It probably took me like 3-4 hours to do, and I ended up negotiating with them to get me at least a link on their site saying that I helped to support them or whatever. So I got a pretty solid backlink from that. Yeah. But other than that, I didn't really get any other work from it, but I do see what you're saying in terms of like the clout and things like that. I mean, people that are on those boards, they're on there because they're resourceful. And so if you can get your name out there to people like that, they might get in touch with you and might throw some referrals your way. But so going back to the first question that I asked, so one of the things that I've actually, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, it's perfect timing for me to have you on this Q&A, is I'm actually building out my sales system right now. So and one of the challenges that I found sort of right away was I get a lot of people contacting me for anything from consultations to actual like proposals, requests for proposals. And I have a hard time managing where I'm putting, like where I'm organizing all this stuff. Like I have Zoho CRM, so I've actually started to put everything into Zoho and manage everything through there. But it's like one more system that I need to log into every single day, and I have like a million tools that I've used, especially thanks to AppSumo. So
Right.
but how do you have everything organized? What are you doing in terms of systems to systematize the whole thing and stay organized?
Yeah, so I've been working on this a lot lately, and I think I've gone. I went through. I had bought Plutio when it was on AppSumo back, I guess earlier this year, or maybe at the end of last year.
It's on AppSumo deal
Yeah,
right now. Just so
yeah,
everybody
yeah,
knows. Yeah.
and it's great. I think it's awesome, but it's just way too much for me. Like I'm a
Yeah.
solo. I don't need to collaborate with the team very often. My customers are not going to get some other login and like do all this. So it just didn't make sense for me. So that sits there. And then I started using Trello and I was doing well with it, but I felt like it was maybe too simple. Maybe I wasn't like inputting enough information. So I did Asana, I did ClickUp, and I stuck with ClickUp for a while. And then I just realized I'm spending way too much time like keeping these systems up to date and like inputting information. I could have just done the job and been done with it. So here recently, I've just moved back to Trello, and it's really simple. So it doesn't have like a ton of information in it, but it's got a card for each like little project coming in. So as far as like those inbound queries that come in. So I find a lot of the ones that I get phone calls on, I got one this morning, somebody needing a website. I find that those don't close very well for me. I think it's, I'm coming up really well in search engine in my local town, but those people don't want to spend the money. So I just find that we don't work well together most of the time. I do get some random emails from people online. I get some queries in from, Facebook leads and stuff like that. But basically what I've resorted to doing is I'm not going to answer any questions or give you any idea of prices or talk about your project at all until you fill out my project discovery form. So number one thing to do is just go to, and y'all can go look at it, see for yourself. Like I said, it's a work in progress. It's OGALWeb, OGALWEB.com/discover.
I'll put the link in the.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just /discover. So you're good. So I send everybody there. Don't crash my site. Come on, people. So I send everybody there and they have to fill out that form. So maybe a month or two into doing that, what I ended up doing was putting a little drop down menu in there that has pricing. So what's your budget for this project? And I think the lowest one on there right now is $2,000. So what I saw when I put that pricing on there is now a lot of the people that I send there never submit the form, which is awesome. So if they can't spend $2,000, I don't want to jack with them anyways. So let's not waste their time. Let's not waste my time. So those forms come in when they do fill them out. They come into my email box. They go into a certain folder, and I keep that on record. Once they send that in, I'll put in a card in Trello under like estimates or prospects, and I'll kind of manage it from there. Usually I'll read through that form and decide, is this going to be a good fit or not a good fit? If I think it has the potential to be a decent project, I'll write them back with a link to book me for a consultation basically. And let's talk, more details about the project. And then if it's not a good fit, I'll usually just let them know, this probably is, I'm probably not the best designer for you in this case. Can I give you a referral? But that's how I'm trying to manage all of it right now, is to just start off like, let's cut out all the people that aren't going to be a good fit and not waste a bunch of time on them. Because it's not like I want to be disrespectful to them, but they're wasting their time too if the project's not going to work for us.
Yeah, that's true. And I think a lot of the guys that really teach a lot of like web design sort of sales courses, they talk a lot about qualifying your prospects as early as possible. Like you're pretty much doing it right from the get-go, right? Which is really smart, because then you're not really wasting your time on any kind of sort of tire kickers or anybody who's really not going to be able to afford you, right? Now, one of the things I think that sort of is a good segue here into another topic is, now you're qualifying people, but in order to close sales and to make sure that those qualified prospects are actually converting into deals, into projects, you mentioned that writing effective proposals has been one of the things that has been key for you. So can you elaborate a little bit about what you mean about what an effective proposal might be and what an ineffective proposal might be, and how that helps the whole sales pipeline.
Yeah. And that's one thing that's like the biggest work in progress in my business, you know. So I hate writing proposals. It's probably the least favorite thing, like task I have to do. It's just not something I enjoy whatsoever. So I did buy Better Proposals, which I just love. Betterproposals.io.
Did you get the lifetime deal on that?
Yeah.
Oh, you lucky son of a bitch.
Yeah. So why I like it is because, first of all, they have some really cool templates in there, and I'm not like a super template-y guy. Usually I just don't find like I fit in the box somehow, or it doesn't make sense to me, but they do have some really great templates, including a template that's based off WP Elevation. So I haven't gone through WP Elevation, but I know like a bazillion people who have, and I've listened to like all their conversations about it. So I feel like I've kind of like subliminally gone through it. But they have a template in there that's based off of how they do things. Which is the one I use. I've just taken it and modified it to make more sense for me. But basically, it's making sure when you write a proposal, you're listening to all the problems your customer has. I found kind of in the consultation we'll have, I prefer to do face-to-face if we're close and can do that, because I just close a whole lot better when I can get in a room with somebody and then you kind of build that rapport with people. If not, on a call like this is good. If you have to do it all through email, it's just harder to like build a relationship, you know. So asking them a lot about what their problems are, and then making sure you just write all those solutions into the proposal, like paint this picture of what their life's going to look like if they give you all their money. You know, technical details, I think that was my biggest problem, is I wanted to tell them about all the plugins I was going to use, and like they don't care, they don't understand what it means. You know, I try to think of it when I'm writing it, like if I was having to explain this to my wife, who is like brilliantly smart but doesn't care about WordPress or websites at all, like I need to make this where she would completely understand and want to buy into this, because that's where my clients are, you know. So trying to really pinpoint what those pain points are and then, you know, address those has been the most effective thing for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I hate writing proposals as well. Like it's just, I find like it's a big time suck, and like you're really at the point of time where you're actually writing the proposal, you're pretty committed in terms of, you know, the amount of time that you're putting into that particular lead or whatever. I usually will, one of the things that I've started to do now is I'll throw out a feeler email first, and just to figure it's to kind of like further qualify them. I really want to just, if I'm gonna go through the process of writing a proposal, we got to be on the same page here, right? So I'll throw an email out. I just did this a little while ago with a gentleman from the UK who had a e-commerce store, and these guys it was built on like open cart or whatever, and it's like it's a really tricky system to work with. I wanted to work with them, but I said, you know, for this to be worth my while and working with this kind of a system, I'm going to need to be in this price range. And I explained it'd be anywhere between, you know, dollar value and dollar value. Is this a budget that you're willing to entertain, right? And if you are, then, you know, I'll send you a proposal. I'll let you know what my ideas are and how we'll go about, you know, carrying this project through to getting the results that you guys are looking for. And it was great because that guy ended up coming back to me and saying, you know, like I can completely see the value of where you bring for that dollar value, and I respect it, but it's just not something that we're willing to put in that much money into right now. Not because we don't see the value, but because it's just we just don't have that amount to invest right now. So he said, what we're going to do is we're going to work on X and X strategies first. They're like more offline strategies and things like that in terms of their like physical stores. Once we have a little bit more revenue and we get things working, then we'll come back to you and we'll revisit it. That's great for me because it maintains that relationship. He knows where I stand in terms of pricing. and it was great to see that he actually saw the value in what I was bringing. But it prevented me from having to sit on my computer for an hour or two writing up a detailed proposal, because this would have been somewhere in like the $20,000 to $30,000 in terms of a project. I obviously, on a $30,000 project, I want to put some good time into that proposal, make sure that it has everything that I need, and it completely avoided me wasting a couple hours of my time doing that. Right, so.
Yeah, and two things on that. So one, I don't know if you watch Chris Do on The Future on Facebook, okay, or on YouTube. So he has tons of like really awesome videos about pricing and stuff. And I just watched one the other day where he's basically talking about exactly what you did. And he said, throw the high number out first. So you'd say it's $30,000 to $20,000, so you kind of hit them with that shock and then give them a little bit of relief on it,
Right.
But if you haven't, if people out there haven't watched him, he's super cocky and kind of annoying, but he's really smart. So it's worth watching it and learning some things from it. But think about this, like, your prices are different than my prices and different than other people in this group's prices. Imagine, and this may be a poor analogy, but imagine if you were going shopping for a car, right? But the outside of the car dealership didn't have any kind of indication of what kind of cars were in it. And you just walk into the building not knowing, if they're selling Porsches or if they're selling Kias, and that's how kind of some of the people are walking into the door of our business, is they don't know, exactly what we do. So, you kind of have to have that thing to say, okay, we're on this end or we're on that end. You just need to know that kind of stuff up front. Otherwise, it's just a whole bunch of wasted time for everybody.
Yeah, that's a great. Actually, I actually like that analogy because, it does kind of hit the point home where you kind of have to find a way of communicating what distinguishes you from everybody else. Because especially in our business, you get people pricing from like the absolute lowest end to like crazy hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Like there really is no standard pricing for what we do. No. And it really comes down to, what do you propose you're going to do? How are you going to do it? And how are you communicating to the prospect that you're the right person to get that done, right?
Right. And you do a lot of stuff on trying to figure out what that ROI is and like calculations as far as how you're going to come up with pricing for customers. My first websites were $500 and I was ecstatic to get $500. And now I don't even want to mess with emailing you for $500. And that's just where my business has moved to. But, you've got to start at one point. But, maybe this is just me, but I know I've talked to some other people that are kind of this way too. A lot of it's kind of made up. Like,
yeah.
Some of it we're just kind of making up. What can you afford, and can I justify this price? Like, I don't want to say this is going to cost you $20,000 and I'm just giving you some junk. Like, I'm not about that. I don't want to take money from people, but part of it is just kind of like getting a feel for people and, seeing what kind of value you can bring. And your value is different to different companies.
Yeah, let's talk pricing, man, because I actually do like this conversation. And I know what you're saying about the made-up pricing stuff. It does sometimes feel that way or can come across that way. I personally don't look at it that way too much because the way I see it is, and I've commented in my group and in other groups about this as well in terms of pricing, because people will ask, well, what's the difference between a $20,000 project and a $5,000 project? And you get all sorts of responses back. But one of the things that I always fall back to, and I feel very strongly about, is it all comes down to risk prevention or risk reduction, right? If I'm and actually I'll give you a good example of this. My son just had his first optometrist visit, and my wife took him to the optometrist, and she decided to, because my optometrist is all the way downtown. It's about a 45-minute drive if there's no traffic, and then we got to find parking downtown, which is a nightmare. It's a long process, but I trust my optometrist. He's one of the best in the city, and he's demonstrated a level of trust and rapport that I have with him. I know he's competent. I know he knows what he's doing. She took my son to an optometrist just not too far from where we live, and the optometrist did their assessment and said my son needs glasses. Gave me the prescription, and the prescription was like pretty out there. I wasn't I was very surprised that he needed a subscription that's strong, a prescription that's strong. What did I end up doing? I ended up canceling or rebooking a second opinion with my optometrist downtown. And the reason for it is because I trust him, right? And because I feel there's less risk in his assessment than there is with somebody who I've never done business with before. And I don't know what kind of work they do. I don't know what their reputation is, and all that other stuff. And that kind of ties into my whole idea of pricing is like, it's all about risk reduction. Early on in my business, one of the things that I found worked exceptionally well for me was being able to sort of harness this risk reduction concept and taking it and using it and leveraging it on every single proposal. Because early on, there wasn't many proposals to be written, right? I had maybe one or two deals and I needed to close those deals. So I was like, okay, how am I going to differentiate? What am I going to do that's going to be that one thing that they're going to look at and be like, there's so little risk there. This guy seems to know what he's talking about and all that other stuff. I don't know who he is, but there's so much more risk in these other proposals, and whatever I could do to sort of infuse that emotions or thoughts into the prospect is what I did. So one of the things that I would do would be like, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I did early on was I actually offered, I did a website for a lady, and I did 3 months of SEO for free. Now the SEO was just on page stuff, optimizing on-page stuff for 3 months. There's a lot of stuff you can do with just on-page optimization from month to month, but that's what I did. And I said, look, I'm going to do the website. The website's going to have an SEO strategy to it right from the get-go. That helped a lot in terms of closing the deal, but she was still a little bit unsure. I said, okay, look, I'm going to throw in 3 months of SEO. If I can demonstrate results, then let's have a conversation that after 3 months, and we'll see if we can convert that into a monthly service that I can continue doing for you, and sort of increase the workload for that to get it to produce even more results. It didn't convert into an SEO campaign, but it did close the website project. That one website project ended up generating at least 2 to 3 referrals for me. One of which I'm actually currently working on, which is actually the photography site that I posted up. That was actually a direct referral from that first project. That was one of my first projects, and that project I think finished about I would say about 9 to 12 months ago, and I got that referral about 3 months ago. So you can see that there's a time lapse between when I closed that deal and when I got the referral. But just closing that first deal is like massively important, right? But now in the point of my business where I'm at now, I still think about risk reduction, and I include that. I factor that into my pricing. So when I have this construction company that I'm doing a website for, and they've tried to do the website on their own, haven't had much luck with it. And I came on board and I said, look, these are the things that you guys are not doing right? And I explained to them, I laid out sort of like a plan on how to improve from where they are now and where they need to be. And in terms of the pricing, like I know what construction has a huge revenues, huge margins, right? So I know that there's enough there to substantiate a higher dollar value. But I also want to make sure that like when I'm pricing it out, if I've demonstrated a level of a confidence, if I've been able to instill a level of confidence with them, and I get that impression, and if I've done a good job of doing that, and that obviously comes from doing things like adding value in your conversations early on, right? Like when I first had a conversation with them, I said, look, let me get connected to your Google Analytics. Let me take a look and dig in and see where some problems are. They gave me access. I dug in a little bit and I said, okay, your conversion rate's really low. Your traffic is dropping off like crazy on these pages. Like, and I just kind of dug into their data a little bit, and I said, I gave them some insight. That in and of itself took me probably maybe 20 to 30 minutes to do. But the amount of confidence that instilled in that client, nobody else has looked at their data at this point. Right, so when they think about potential people to hire to do this job, they're going to be like, who should we hire? The guys that have never looked at our data, or the guy who's looked at our data and knows what the problems are. So it's like a no-brainer to do things like that, right? And if you do that and you instill that confidence in them, now you've reduced that risk for them. You're now the low risk option, so you can be the higher dollar value proposal because the risk to value ratio is there, right? If you don't instill a level of confidence, capability, right, competence, and you don't show them how you're going to get them the results that you need, now your risk profile is the same as everybody else's out there, right? And so you haven't really distinguished yourself, differentiated yourself. If you can instill a sense of if you can reduce that risk, you can charge more. So I ended up charging I still actually undervalued that project. That probably could have charged 10 to 15,000, and I actually only charged them 8,000 for the website. But it's still probably double of what I would have charged 6 months ago. So it's great to have been able to close a higher dollar value project. But it all for me stems down to how are you reducing the risk for them, right?
Yeah, and I do have some conversations like that with them, especially if we can have a good consultation and we can talk about what are their goals, like why do you want a website? The most clients can see what the website looks like, and it's either pretty or not pretty, or it works or it doesn't work, whatever that means. But they don't really understand all the things that make things work or not work. So we'll talk about what are your competitors doing, and something that you mentioned Matt Siebert earlier, something he'll actually write into proposals and charge them for is like skyscraping competitors. Like, let's see what's on their website, what the language is, who they're going after. Let's learn as much as we can about your competitors. So there's some added value to you. There's looking at those strategies to say, okay, why do you want a website? Well, I need more leads. Okay, well, it's not really a website that's going to get you more leads. It's going to be some kind of SEO strategy that's going to get you more leads, or some kind of funnel that converts those leads, that do end up on your website. So it's not just a pretty website that's going to do that. You're not going to just open up Wix or Squarespace and just throw something together and that happen. And that's, a lot of people that come to you and they have an existing website they did themselves and say, well, a website doesn't really work for me, or it hasn't worked for me. Yeah. That's because you don't have all these other things in place. So trying to talk to them and find out what their problems are and how you can solve that, or we're redoing a big site, and I told somebody a while back, I want to say they had, 100 and something pages on their website, and the structure of it was just really not good. It's not how I would have done it. So I said, well, we're going to optimize the structure of that, and then we're also going to make sure we don't break any of those links, and everything's going to be fine. So anywhere those things are linked to elsewhere, it's going to redirect them perfectly and everything. So that's something that they would have never thought about or thought was a problem. But I told them, hey, I'm already looking at all these things, and we already know how to get all this done right. Yeah. So that's part of that, that risk, that the risk that they don't have with you, the risk reduction by doing that. So you just learn those things too as you go along. The first websites I made, I didn't think about any of that. It was literally just, how can I make this look pretty?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And actually, when you touched on a good point there, and to say that, to get the sort of results that a particular client might need, might require other sort of skill sets that you may not have, right? Like you touched on SEO, or you touched on even doing things like copywriting. And it's one of the core focuses of my group, right, is connecting people with other people who are good at what they do. And that actually has helped me quite a bit in terms of closing deals, because my proposals look a lot different than other people's, right? Like when I put a proposal forward, I say, this is what you need. And I'll explain, we're going to do copywriting. I'm going to do the copy for the entire site. Like I won't even include it as an optional thing. So I just say, we're going to do all the copy for your website. It's going to be taken care of. Professional copywriting with, that's conversion rate optimized copy, sales copy. And, I have a copywriter that I work. I have few copywriters that I work with, and they take care of all that stuff. Like obviously, they give me a quote, and I will, mark that up a little bit to make some money. But that the whole point of it is that you're now putting together like a whole solution as opposed to just a part of a solution, right? And now you can justify a higher price because you're putting together more things that are going to produce better results. And you're making more money because you're going to mark things up from your suppliers, right? So,
Right.
that's just the way that I've done things, and I like, obviously the margins are a little bit lower for me. I mean, you talked about getting up to like 90% margins. My margins are somewhere in the like 60 to 80%, depending on what we're talking about. But my project values are going to be higher than most people's, right? So I'm perfectly happy with 60%, especially for me, because what I do is I really do the web design stuff as a means to try to get people into the monthly recurring sort of services, like either care plans or SEO or whatever the case might be. And so it tends to work out really well for me to be able to put together these different services for a particular client, right?
Well, here's an example of understanding what the customer is really after and how you can sell a website based upon that, or whatever kind of project. So I think me and you talked about this in a thread a while back. So I had a city government come to me and say, we need a website and let's schedule a meeting or whatever. So I went and scheduled a meeting with them, and I went to that meeting with like a book full of research and the things we could do and how we could like really help this city out and blah, blah, blah. And I get to the meeting, and it's this little tiny community, they basically said, our city council, basically there's somebody on there being loud about our website's no good. And we have this budget we have to spend, but really the city is completely hands off. They don't do anything. They're basically an incorporated city to keep the other big city next to them from annexing them. So their whole point was, they needed a website to shut somebody up and to spend budget, but they don't want anybody to see it. Like, they don't want it to be found in search engines. They don't want it to do anything. It doesn't need to ever change. Once a year, we're going to update the city council people. And that was just like a completely different proposal than what I would have wrote without knowing that.
Yeah, that's
true. It ended up being like a really cheap site, so I wasn't able to do all the things I wanted, but literally it was just take the information, make it look pretty, and collect a couple $1,000, and I didn't have to do any of that other stuff, So understanding the why is super important on being able to convert the job.
That's true. That's really, really a good point to touch on, because I think a lot of people are too quick to just throw a proposal out there without really having a clear understanding of why they're even putting this proposal together. How do you initiate conversations with prospects? Is it mainly through phone that you do your sort of client discovery through, or?
So the first thing they'll do is fill out that form. And I'll take a look at it. And then what I usually do is try to schedule a call with them. So if they're local, either way, whether they're local or not, I'll usually try to schedule some kind of phone call with them. The project discovery form, I have to like hit that balance between like, I want to get a ton of information out of them so I understand what the project is, but also I want them to like fill it out, and if it's 6 pages long, they're just not going to do it, so you kind of have to balance that. So, like I said, it's all work in progress, but I'll usually get them on the phone after that so I can follow up on some of those questions. Hey, got your project discovery form. Sounds really like a good project for me. Let me ask you some follow-up questions about this, So I'll ask them some of those why questions there. If everything's good, and we can get together in person, we'll do that. I'll schedule some kind of meeting where we can like really hash out what's this website about and like everything I'm going to need to know to write a proposal. If they're remote, we'll just usually schedule a Zoom call and get on there and talk about it like that. But the more you know before you write the proposal, obviously, the more effective your proposal is going to be. You just got to get at that why.
Yeah, and you got to get to the pain points so that you can actually talk or touch on those pain points in the actual proposal itself as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, imagine if I went to that meeting with a proposal written out where I was talking about SEO strategy and online bill pay and like all this stuff that they had no interest. I mean, I would have never got the job because that's not what they were wanting at all. And
you probably would have been twice the budget that they were looking at, right?
Oh yeah, if not more.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, Kyle, we're getting to the 1 hour mark here. It's been great talking to you, man. I always have an amazing time chatting with you. You're a really top-notch guy, and I know you have an appointment with your kid. So I'm gonna let you go. Thanks for joining me, though. Do you have any last words you want to just maybe tell people how to connect with you? I know you have. I'll drop a link to the admin group in this thread. But is there any other way that you'd like for people to connect with you, or?
Yeah, Facebook's usually the easiest. I'm like you said, I'm on all these groups chatting. You did ask me though, and I'm going to go back to this. You said you wanted to ask me the biggest mistake and the best tip.
Right. Yes.
So
thank you for
reminding
me. Thank
You're
you
going
for
to cut
reminding
me
me.
off before this happens.
Yes.
So,
So let's do that before we wrap up. So
doing a little production on your show here.
Yeah. It's just we got a little carried away, and I don't want to take you away from your family life. So, okay, so real quickly, the number one tip that you can give to anybody watching this Q&A in terms of how they can start to improve their sales game.
So look for ways to partner up with people. So some of the biggest pipelines I've gotten, and then some of the biggest clients I have are not ones that just came to me for a website. They were some kind of partnership I made. So one is with a guy who has a really successful business doing nothing but AdWords campaigns for a specific niche. So he was having a problem with conversion rates on landing pages. He needed a designer to redo landing pages for him. We've worked really well together, and that's been like an ongoing relationship and one of my biggest clients. So, it was kind of a thing where I'm just helping his business. I'm working on behalf of his business, but it's been a great deal for me. Another one is I came from a print design background, so I understand like print shops really well. And I've gone to all the local print shops and said, hey, listen, I think we have something that could be mutually beneficial here. I could provide website design and development services to your customers. They're used to getting sales calls where people want them to buy new equipment and spend all this money. So my pitch to them is like, listen, this is going to cost you nothing. Like, I'm going to tell you how you can easily spot who needs a website, how you can refer them to me, and then I'm going to cut you a check every time I get one of those deals closed. So that's like super easy, and it's a no-brainer for them, and it's easy for them to spot who needs a website. I cut them a check because I don't have to do any of the sales stuff. And I usually just mark the project up anyways to cover the thing. So I'm really
So I remember you actually talking about this earlier, and I actually never got a final conclusion on that. So you ended up closing that partnership with that print shop then?
How's
that worked out?
I got one here in town where I just moved to this town back in the end of May. So I got one here in town. They're the biggest print shop in town. They stay really busy, but they literally have a list of all the customers I want. And they have a storefront, and they have people walking in the door, and I have none of that, So it's a no-brainer. So yeah, I've already bid on a couple projects of people they've sent my way. I basically gave them two options. One was like, hey, you manage the project and I'll just pretend I work for you and do the website. You can give me an email address or whatever, and I'll just pretend I work for you. Or just send me the referral and I'll take care of all of it and cut you a check, and you never have to think about it, and that's what they ended up going with. That made the most sense for their business. Yeah. They didn't have time to mess with it. So, they just send people to me.
I love that, man, because honestly, I think partnerships like that, where you can get like a referral sort of channel opened up, like that's kind of what the core of my group is all about, is trying to set up these partnerships with people where you're sort of bypassing the entire sales process. You're kind of hacking the whole thing, and instead of going out there and prospecting and doing cold calls and cold emails, like if you can just partner with people and have a mutually beneficial partnership where you win, they win, and the client wins, like that's just it's like the perfect arrangement, right? Everybody makes money, everybody wins. So,
and I can stay in my pajamas all day.
There you go, playing with Lego.
Yeah.
Okay, so quickly before we close this off, what's one of the biggest lessons you've learned? One of the biggest mistakes you've learned early on in terms of sales? And how has that taught you to be a better businessman?
Okay, so if your gut is telling you no, just say no. Like every time it's going to turn out bad, even if you like mentally convince yourself like, no, because of this and that and that. No, if your gut says no, don't do it. Find a way out of it. I got one of those phone calls right before we got on here. This guy tried to hire me before. He didn't want to work the way I wanted to work, so I didn't do the project. Then he called me back and asked me for a referral. I gave him a referral, and then that referral came back and told me that the guy didn't want to pay him after he had done the work. And so the guy calls me back right before we get on this call. It's like, man, none of these things have worked out. I really just want to hire you now. And I'm like, No way. There's just no way. And it's a big paying project. I think it's a big paying project. I think it could be good money, but there's just no way I want to work with that dude. So even though I see the dollar signs, like, just say no when you know it's not right, because it's going to end up costing you way more money than what you could ever make on the project.
One of the sayings that I got, and I can't remember who I got this from, might have been Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm not sure. They said, the way that a business relationship starts is often the way that the business relationship will end. If it starts off on a rough foot, expect it to end in a rough way. So I 100% can agree with what you're saying, that if you start seeing red flags pop up, either one, address them immediately and either confirm that there's potential issues there, or clear the air or whatever, or just say no, because it's just really not worth your time. You could be if you end up working on a project like that and the relationship goes sour because they don't pay, or they're just a pain in the ass, or whatever the case might be, you're not going to get referrals anyways. You could be working on a project that's half the project value, but it could end up throwing you referrals for the next year because people, maybe they're well connected or whatnot. It's just not worth it. There's way better opportunities out there. There's plenty of businesses to work with, and you don't need to be taking whatever comes your way, essentially.
And if you're solo like me, especially, like, there's also risk in taking on jobs, in the fact that now I can't do other jobs, so if I'm committing to something, that means I can't commit to something else coming in possibly, so if you're committing yourself to crappy jobs all the time, you're missing all the opportunities for the good ones. So
that's even more of a problem for me in terms of the SEO side of things, because if I take on a client for an SEO project and they end up being a pain in the ass, or they're just tough to work with, I close the doors to any other business in that market in my city, because I'm not going to compete with myself. So right. It becomes even more of an issue from the SEO side of things. But I get what you're saying, and it's 100% true. So pick and choose who you want to work with. Obviously when you start out, you kind of have to take what you can get, but you can still be a little bit choosy. You can still say no and wait for the next opportunity, or like Kyle said, find partners. Like, there's tons of opportunities in your city, I guarantee you, to find business relationships. Last month, I talked with Anthony Emilia, who does all of his business through networking, and go out and network, because Anthony and I had a really good conversation about how he has sort of developed this great sales channel just through networking, and he has tons of business. His business is growing month over month, right? So it's not of a lack of opportunities out there. I think it's more of a lack of you actually getting out there and doing what you need to do to actually start to grow your business. I think a lot of us get too comfortable in our rooms full of toys, and so I think we got to get out there is the point, and you really have to push yourself to grow those sales channels out. I actually, and I don't want to take too much more of your time out there, but I actually had a conversation with a gentleman who was talking about how he pays for some leads, and he's gotten some decent business out of it. So I'm actually looking at all different channels right now, from just organic to networking to even paid leads. So whatever works, right? You got to try to see, you got to test and see what works, and then whatever does work, you got to double down on it, right?
Absolutely.
So Kyle, thanks again for joining me, man. You're always an awesome guy to talk to, and I always learn a ton from you. So I appreciate it. And I'll I guess we'll just we'll close this off now. And I know you're probably not going to have a whole lot of time to answer any questions in the comments, but if you want to jump on later on and answer any questions, that'd be great. I'll try to answer.
Please put all your
I
questions in there, and I'll either write something intelligent or smart ass right underneath it,
or throw a GIF in there.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Kyle.
Hey, I appreciate it, Chris.
Take care, man.